I moved to Seoul 3 years ago with 2 suitcases and a one-way ticket. My mother had just passed after a long illness, and my older brother made it clear there was nothing left for me at home. No inheritance, no family business to join, just debt, and his resentment that I'd gone to university instead of helping out. So when the teaching position came through, I took it. I needed distance. I needed to become someone new in a place where no one knew me as the daughter who couldn't save her mother. The loneliness hit me harder than I expected. I spoke barely functional Korean. I smiled too much at strangers and they looked away, uncomfortable. I ate alone in restaurants, went to movies alone, walked home alone through streets full of people who had lives and families and history here. Some nights I'd sit on the subway and watch couples laughing together, old women gossiping, students teasing each other, and I felt like I was watching life happen behind glass. But the apartment felt like mine. It was tiny. 1 bedroom, a narrow living room with a balcony I never used, a bathroom the size of a closet. It was on the 2nd floor of an old building on a quiet residential street, nothing fancy, but the rent was cheap and the landlady was kind enough not to ask too many questions. When I signed the lease, I cried in the empty living room. Not from sadness exactly, from the weight of it. This was my space, my new beginning. No one could take it from me. For the first 2 months, everything was fine. Then I started hearing the footsteps. It would happen late at night, always when I was lying in bed. A slow, measured pace crossing the living room from the bedroom doorway toward the balcony, then back again. The first time I heard it, I held my breath and told myself it was the tenant below me, or the building settling, or my upstairs neighbor, even though I was on the top floor. Old buildings make noise. I was being paranoid, adjusting to a new place. But the footsteps kept coming back. They were rhythmic, deliberate. The soft compression of weight on old floorboards, evenly spaced like someone pacing. Always the same path, from my bedroom door across the living room to the balcony door. Then back, over and over, sometimes for just a minute or two, sometimes for 10 minutes straight. I started sleeping with my door closed and a pillow over my head. One weekend, my friend Emma stayed over. She was another expat teacher, one of the few people I'd gotten close to. We stayed up late, drinking cheap wine and complaining about our schools, and eventually she crashed on my couch. At 3 a.m., she shook me awake. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. I heard it. The footsteps crossing from the living room doorway to the balcony. "It's just building noise," I said automatically, but my voice shook. "That's not building noise. That's someone walking." We sat frozen in my bed, listening. The footsteps reached the balcony door, paused, then started back. Emma grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. "There's no one out there," I whispered. "There can't be." But we both heard it, steady, patient, back and forth. When it finally stopped, neither of us could sleep. Emma left early the next morning and never stayed over again. She didn't say it directly, but I could see it in her face. She thought something was wrong with my apartment, and maybe she was right. I became afraid of my own home. The footsteps only happened when I was in bed or in the bathroom, never when I was in the living room myself. As if whatever was there waited for me to be out of sight. I stopped investigating. I'd pull the blanket over my head and count my breaths until it stopped, my heart hammering against my ribs. I thought about breaking the lease, but where would I go? I'd used everything I had for the deposit, and how could I explain it? I'm leaving because I hear footsteps that might be nothing. Then came the night I'll never forget. I'd stayed late at a co-worker's birthday dinner, and it was past midnight when I got back. The street was empty, just yellow streetlights and the hum of a distant convenience store. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, fumbling for my keys, exhausted and a little drunk. I unlocked the door and pushed it open, and I knew immediately. Someone was inside. I can't explain how I knew. There was no sound, no movement, nothing visible, but every instinct in my body screamed it. The air felt wrong, disturbed, occupied. My apartment had a presence in it, the way a room feels different when someone's been there while you were gone. My eyes went straight to the balcony. The light was on. I never used that balcony. The door stuck and the light switch was broken, or so I thought. I hadn't turned it on once in 8 months of living there, but now yellow light spilled through the glass door, illuminating the dark living room. Panic flooded my chest. I slammed my hand against the wall switch, flooding the apartment with light. My hands were shaking. I went to the kitchen and grabbed the largest knife I had, gripping it so hard my knuckles went white. "Hello?" My voice came out small and pathetic. No answer. I moved through the apartment, knife raised, turning on every light. Living room, empty. I checked behind the couch, behind the chair. Balcony door. I yanked it open, nearly tripping as I stepped outside. Nothing. Just cold night air and the view of the dark street below. Bathroom. I ripped the shower curtain aside. Empty. Bedroom. I checked under the bed, looked behind the door, checked the window. Nothing. The closet was last. I stood in front of it, breathing hard, the knife trembling in my hand. It was a small sliding door closet, barely big enough for my clothes. But it was the only place left. I thought about all the horror movies I'd ever seen, about how stupid the characters always were, about how I was being that person right now. I reached out and slid the door open fast, jumping back, knife raised. Clothes, just clothes on hangers, swaying slightly from the motion. A few boxes on the floor. No one. I searched every corner again, checked the front door lock, checked the windows. Everything was secure. Everything was empty. I sat on my bed, still holding the knife, trying to slow my breathing. I hadn't imagined the light. It was on. I saw it. And I know, I didn't turn it on. That night I tried to sleep with all the lights on. Around 2 a.m., the footsteps started again. Slow, deliberate, crossing from my bedroom doorway to the balcony and back. I buried my face in my pillow and cried as quietly as I could, feeling pathetic and terrified and utterly alone. I still live in that apartment. I can't afford to move, and part of me refuses to be driven out of the one space that's supposed to be mine. The footsteps still happen, maybe twice a week. I've stopped trying to explain them. Emma thinks I should see someone, talk to a therapist about stress and isolation. Maybe she's right. But feelings prove nothing. Anxiety can't turn on lights. Loneliness can't create footsteps that two people hear. I know I didn't turn that balcony light on, and I still hear the footsteps. Sometimes, late at night when they start, I wonder if I'm really alone in this country after all, if something followed me here or if something was already waiting, if it knows how far I am from anyone who would come if I screamed. I wonder if it's waiting for something, and I wonder what will happen when it stops pacing. I took the job 3 weeks after signing the divorce papers. Trail maintenance for the Forest Service. 6 months in a fire lookout cabin 40 miles from the nearest town. The pay was terrible, but it came with housing, and more importantly, it came with silence. After 2 years of arguments that ended in lawyers and divided furniture, silence was exactly what I needed. My ex-wife used to say I shut down emotionally. Maybe she was right. By the end, I couldn't stand being around people, the forced small talk, the questions about how I was doing, the look of pity from friends who'd already chosen sides. The woods seemed like the perfect reset. Just me, the trees, and enough distance from everything that had fallen apart. The cabin was smaller than I expected. One room, a wood stove, a cot, and a desk where I filed my daily reports. The forest pressed in on all sides, dense stands of Douglas fir and lodgepole pine that blocked out the sky. During the day, I walked the trails with my clipboard, checking for downed trees and trail erosion. At night, I heated canned soup and read by lantern light. No cell service, a radio for emergencies. It was exactly what I'd wanted. The first week passed without incident. I fell into a rhythm. Wake at dawn, hike until afternoon, return exhausted enough to sleep. The silence was thick but manageable. I told myself I was healing. It was the 8th night when I first saw them. I'd stepped outside to piss before bed, too lazy to use the composting toilet around back. The porch light barely reached 10 feet, and beyond that was just solid darkness. But as I stood there, I noticed something at the tree line. A shape, tall and still, just outside the reach of the light. I stared at it for maybe 30 seconds. It didn't move. My rational mind supplied explanations. Oddly shaped tree, shadows playing tricks, fatigue. I went back inside and locked the door, feeling foolish. But the next night it was there again. Same spot, same stillness. I grabbed my flashlight and swept the beam across the trees. Nothing, just trunks and underbrush. But when I lowered the light, I could swear the shape was still there in my peripheral vision. I convinced myself it was a stump or a broken branch, catching the ambient light wrong. On the 3rd night, there were 2 of them. One at the tree line to the left of the cabin, one to the right. Both perfectly still, both just barely visible in the darkness. I felt something cold move through my chest, not quite fear yet, but its precursor. The kind of unease that makes you check the locks twice. I didn't go outside after dark anymore. The knocking started on night 12. 3 soft taps on the window beside my cot. I was half asleep when I heard them, and for a moment, I thought I'd imagined it. Then they came again. I sat up, heart hammering. The window was too high for an animal, too deliberate for branches. I didn't move, didn't breathe. After a minute of silence, I finally worked up the nerve to look. Nothing. Just my own reflection in the dark glass and the forest beyond. I radioed my supervisor the next morning. Told him I'd heard something around the cabin, maybe a bear or vagrant. He said he'd send someone to check it out, but it would be a few days. In the meantime, he reminded me there was a shotgun in the storage locker if I felt unsafe. I got the shotgun out that afternoon. That night, the door handle rattled. Not violently, just a slow testing movement, like someone checking if it was locked. I was standing in the middle of the room with the shotgun when it happened, and I nearly dropped it. I yelled, "Who's there?" and my voice sounded strangled and small. The rattling stopped. I stood there for 10 minutes, gun raised, waiting. Then I threw the door open and swept the porch with my flashlight. Empty. Not even footprints in the dirt. My supervisor came out 2 days later with a ranger. They walked the perimeter, checked for tracks, looked for any sign of people or animals. Found nothing. The ranger suggested I was hearing the cabin settle, maybe some wildlife. He was friendly but skeptical. I could see it in his face. He thought I was cracking under the isolation. Maybe I was. But that night they came closer. I counted 5 of them in the darkness, standing in a loose semicircle around the cabin. Close enough now that I could make out their silhouettes. Tall, human-shaped, but wrong, in some way I couldn't articulate. They didn't move, didn't make sound, just stood there watching. I didn't sleep. I sat on the cot with the shotgun across my lap and the lantern burning, listening to my own breathing. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps on the porch, slow, deliberate steps from one end to the other. back and forth. I didn't look. I just sat there, shaking until dawn broke. When the sun came up, I walked outside. No footprints, no marks, nothing. I lasted 2 more nights. The figures kept coming closer. On the final night, I could see them just beyond the porch light. 7 or 8 of them now, standing shoulder to shoulder. Their faces, if they had faces, were lost in shadow. But I could feel their attention like a physical weight. I packed my truck at 2 a.m. and drove out. Didn't stop until I hit pavement. Didn't look in the rearview mirror. I called my supervisor from a motel in town and quit over the phone. He tried to convince me to come back, said he'd arrange for a partner to stay with me. I refused. A few days later, he told me he'd gone back to the cabin with 2 other rangers. Everything was normal. No signs of disturbance. No evidence of trespassers. I moved back to the city, found a studio apartment, started therapy. My therapist says isolation can do strange things to the mind, create patterns where none exist, amplify natural anxiety into paranoia. She's probably right. But sometimes, late at night when I'm falling asleep, I think about those figures, how they never moved, how they just watched, and I wonder if maybe there are things in the deep woods that we're not supposed to see. Things that notice when someone wanders too far from the world of people and light. I wonder if they're still standing there in that semicircle around an empty cabin, waiting for the next person who needs to disappear for a while. I've never posted anything like this before, but I need to write this down somewhere. Maybe someone else has experienced something similar. I don't know what happened to me 3 months ago, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to know. It was a Tuesday night in late October. Nothing special about the day. I'd finished work, grabbed takeout, watched some videos. My parents were visiting my sister 2 states over, so I had the house to myself for the week. I'd been looking forward to it, actually. Some quiet time, you know. Around 1 a.m., I was lying in bed with the lights off, just scrolling through my phone. Not tired enough to sleep yet, but relaxed. The house was silent except for the usual sounds, the refrigerator humming downstairs, the occasional creak of the settling foundation. Normal stuff. Then it hit me. I don't know how else to describe it except as a wave. This sudden, overwhelming sense of dread that came out of absolutely nowhere. My chest tightened. My hands went cold. It felt like that split second before a car accident, when your body knows something terrible is about to happen, but your brain hasn't caught up yet. Except there was no accident coming. There was no reason for it. And then I felt the cold. The temperature in my room dropped. I'm not talking about a draft from the window or the AC kicking on. This was different. It was like the warmth got sucked out of the air itself. I could see my breath forming small clouds in the darkness. That's when I knew something was wrong. I stayed perfectly still, phone screen dimmed in my hand, and that's when I felt it. A presence. In the corner of my room, near my closet. I couldn't see anything. My eyes had adjusted to the dark, and there was nothing there. But I could feel it. The same way you can feel someone staring at you from across a room. Except this felt aware, focused, malicious. My rational brain tried to take over. Anxiety attack, I thought. You're stressed about something and your mind is playing tricks. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to think logically. But the feeling didn't fade. It got stronger, heavier, like whatever was there was getting closer, even though I saw nothing move. I needed to hear another human voice. I needed to know I wasn't losing my mind. I called my best friend Marcus. He lives about 20 minutes away, and I knew he'd be up. He's a night owl. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. It rang 4 times before he picked up. "Yo, what's up?" His voice sounded so normal, so grounded in reality. that I almost cried with relief. "Hey man," I whispered. I don't know why I was whispering. "I know this is weird, but can you just talk to me for a minute?" "You okay? You sound off." "I don't know, something feels really wrong right now. I'm probably being paranoid, but..." That's when I heard it. A creak, slow and deliberate, like weight shifting on a floorboard. It came from the corner where I felt the presence. "Did you hear that?" I breathed. "Hear what?" Then another sound, softer this time, almost like fabric rustling or a breath being drawn. Or maybe a whisper, I couldn't tell. But it was there, in the room with me. "Marcus, I'm not kidding, He went silent mid-sentence. Not like the call dropped. I could still hear the faint static of the open line. But he stopped talking completely. "Marcus?" "Dude." His voice came back, but it was different, tight, scared. "What the f*** was that?" What happened?" "I just heard..." He paused, and I heard him breathing hard. There was a voice, through the phone. A really deep voice, like distorted or something. It said, "Stop talking." "It wasn't you, man." "What the f*** is going on?" Ice flooded my veins. "I didn't say anything," I whispered. We both went silent. In that silence, I heard it again. A soft, shifting sound, closer now. Maybe 5 feet from my bed. I slammed my hand against the light switch. The lamp blazed to life, and I jerked upright, scanning every corner of the room. Nothing. My closet door was closed. The corner was empty. My desk, my dresser, my bookshelf. Everything exactly where it should be. But the cold was still there, and that crushing weight in the air had only lessened slightly, like something had stepped back but not left. "I'm getting out," I told Marcus. "I'm leaving right now. Come here, come to my place." I was already moving. I grabbed my keys and wallet off the nightstand, didn't bother with shoes, didn't bother with anything else. I kept the phone pressed to my ear as I moved through the dark hallway, down the stairs, through the living room. Every shadow felt wrong. Every doorway felt like something might be standing just out of sight. I locked the front door behind me, stupid, I know, like that would help, and got in my car. My hands were still shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. I drove to Marcus's apartment and spent the rest of the night on his couch. We didn't talk about it much. What was there to say? Neither of us could explain what happened. I went back home the next afternoon. In daylight, with my parents returned, everything seemed normal again. The house felt like a house. My room felt like my room. I've slept there every night since, and nothing like that has happened again. But sometimes, late at night, I lie awake and think about it. About that presence in the corner. About the voice Marcus heard. About how the cold felt so deliberate, so directed at me specifically. I don't know what was in my room that night. I don't know if it was some weird sleep paralysis type thing, or carbon monoxide, or some shared auditory hallucination between me and Marcus. I've tried to rationalize it 1,000 different ways, but here's what I can't get past. Marcus heard it too. Whatever spoke, he heard it, and it knew we were talking. I still wonder what it wanted, and I wonder why it hasn't come back. Or maybe it's just waiting.